Okay, so you've completed the first part of the video. Now we're going to move on and start to set up our little program. Let's go ahead. I want to go ahead and show the frame. Now what I want to do is I'm going to drag these puzzle pieces where they belong, where they need to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and start putting them right in here. And this piece says piece 1, and I want to give this a name of space 1. Okay, so the variable name is space 1. Okay, what I want to make sure I do is I don't want any spaces in here. I'm going to capitalize this because this is going to be important later, and I'm going to call it space 1. This is piece 1. We're going to do the same thing. Now if we get into problems later, it might be how we name stuff, so we'll have to pay attention to this. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to drop in puzzle piece 2 here, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to call this space 2. And what you're going to do is we're going to do that for all of our little pieces here. We're going to try and make sure that they are where they need to be. So we don't. And the other reason we did this is we want to make sure that we put down our puzzle. We don't want any red spaces. We don't want to see any red in here. Okay. So if we have to, we can. That's why we had that colored background, so that we can really see through where our pieces are. Okay. And we'll go up and we'll line it all up later. Space 3. And I'm going to do the same thing with piece 4. I'm going to lay it in here. And I'm going to call this space 4. We're going to need to know all of this later because it's going to be very important for us when we come in here and we set up our little puzzle. Okay, this is going to be very important to us. So we want to make sure that we know where everything is, that everything's lined up the way it's supposed to be. Looks like we kind of didn't slice real well. So we'll have to come back and realign everything and kind of play around here. Because what probably happened is, as you can see, I've got some problems with some overlap. We might have to come in here and clean this up a little bit and see what happens. But anyway, you'll get a pretty good idea of what's going on here with the way this is laid out. Okay. I'm just kind of looking to see where everything's kind of laying out here, how it's all laying up. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing with piece 5. We're going to drop it in there. We're going to name it space 5. Same with 6. So you'll want to do this with all your pieces. Just go through and put all your puzzle pieces together. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, line everything up, create your variables, and then come back and we'll work from there. Okay, so now I've got all my pieces, and make sure that it says space 1, space 2 down here in your variables, 3 all the way to space 12. Now what you're going to do is, believe it or not, we're going to actually do this. Now this, if you've done the color book tutorial, will look familiar to you, because what we're going to do now is we're going to change the tint here, and we can play with these numbers. This tint is kind of a white. What we want to do when we change these tints is we want to alternate the colors here. So what I want to do is I want you to play with the RGB. What I've done is for the first one you'll notice I have 255, 255, 204 for the first one, but for this one I'm going to go ahead and make this, let's say 150. Okay. We'll hit enter, and notice it kind of gives it a yellow color. The reason I'm doing this is because I want each one of these to be tinted out. I want it to be a grid. Actually, I want it to have a grid look to it, but I need these pieces to be the foundation for the puzzle. Because what we're going to do once we've completed the grid is we are then going to take our draggable puzzle pieces and program them so that they correspond with each piece here. Okay, and I'll show you. It's probably, that might be a little confusing, but for right now what we want to do is we're going to tint these out so you can't see them, because what's going to be what's in there is the puzzle piece. We have it there. Remember, the space, this variable we're going to use later, so it's real important that you remember how you named everything, and then you're going to come in and use that kind of as the foundation to snap your pieces into place, basically, is what it's going to be. Okay, so it might be a smidge confusing, but hopefully not too bad. So go through and set up your grid, and then go ahead and pause the video here, come back, and your grid should be set up. We should be in the same spot. So go ahead and tint out all your spaces. Okay, so your grid's set up. This gives us a chance too to come in and look and see where we need to maybe play around a little bit. Part of what you're going to be seeing here also, don't forget, is probably the lines of our grid. These black lines are our grid lines, so you'll probably see those as well when you come through here. Once we take all this away, hopefully that's what's sitting here when we go to get rid of these darn grid lines. And one of the things we'll have to do is unlock. Remember, we locked our grid, okay, our snapping here. We locked our guides. We went here and locked our guides. So we can go ahead and clear those eventually, but not yet. We don't want to screw with anything quite yet. Okay, so I've got my spaces in. I'm going to go ahead and just lock them down for now, because we're not going to play with these after this. Right now, everything is, we're preparing now to get ready to put the, build the puzzle pieces, because that's really what's next. Okay, so there's one of two ways we can go ahead and do the draggable buttons. What we can do is, I want you to double click on this, and we can go into each one of these draggable buttons right here. And here's the button. I want you to go ahead and create another layer, and this is going to be for our invisible button. And then you're going to go ahead and throw this invisible button right here on this button. These crosshairs are great because it allows us to kind of go in here and line them up. Okay, so there's our invisible button. So if we were to look at this, this is draggable piece 1. Remember, it's got the invisible button on it. So now this piece looks a little different. When we go to put draggable piece 1 on here and we drop it, oops, let's go into pieces right here. We drag this piece down now, it looks like that. Whereas this piece without the draggable button on it looks like that. Okay? So, again, here's what it looks like because it has the invisible button on it. Here's what it looks like when it doesn't have the invisible button. So now what I want you to do is, again, click on the draggable piece 1, or draggable piece 2, I'm sorry, we already did this with 1. I want you to go ahead, add a layer. We're going to call this invisible button. Okay. We're going to go ahead and drag our invisible button on top of this. Remember our crosshairs, line them up. We'll go back to scene 2. We can click on draggable button piece 2 or 3, and we're going to add another layer. This is going to be invisible button layer. Okay, and we're going to grab that invisible button layer out of the library, drag it up on here. It's not quite lined up, so all we have to do is use our arrow keys to line it up. Go back to our scene. Go to draggable button 4. So what I want you to do now is I want you to take all your draggable buttons and put the invisible button on each one of them. So go ahead and pause the video here. And when you come back, all of your draggable pieces should have a button on them. The other thing I'm going to we're going to talk about is what to do when we have this draggable button piece 1 and draggable button piece 2. How do we play with that? What is it we got to do with this? Okay? Okay, so you should have been able to make all your buttons. It's pretty easy to go through and look to see, if you look over here, whether you've made all the buttons or not, because they all now have that blue tint on them. You're almost halfway there. Okay, so now what we've got are our draggable button pieces. We're going to drop them onto our little stage here. When you get to button draggable piece 1, now I want you to name it something different. I want you to go ahead and name draggable piece 1. I just want you to go ahead and name it piece 1. And when you do piece 2, you're going to put the draggable piece 2 in there. You're going to do the same thing. So you're going to put piece 2. Okay? Because these are going to correspond with our programming when we go to set this movie scene up. Remember, we named the spaces space 1. We took piece 1 and gave it an instance name of space 1. Now notice we have piece 1 here and piece 1 here. Piece 2, piece 2. We're going to use this, we're going to program all this, so this is going to make sense in a little while. I want you to do the same thing with all the other pieces. I want you to drop them onto your puzzle. Give them the variable names of piece and then their corresponding number. So go ahead and pause the video and set up your puzzle. Okay, so we've laid out the puzzle. All your pieces should be looking something like this, and if you need to go in and tweak it, by all means just go in and play around with it, tweak it, do what you need to do. It's not that paramount yet, but it will be later. So right now this is what the puzzle looks like. It's not bad, not bad. Could we do better? Sure, we could always do better. You know, that's one of those things where sometimes we're not always happy with what we have. But it's a good start. This is going to give you a great opportunity to make an interactive exercise for your users. You can do any graphic. You can use anything to create this puzzle. You can make it as big as you want. You've just got to adjust your programming accordingly. Okay, so you know what? You want to make sure that you Control-S, save this. Remember that this is titled, your scene is titled Puzzle, because you're going to be using that scene as part of your interactivity when you create your navigation and you have your main navigation, and you'll allow your user either to go to have the story read to them, the color book, the drag and drop exercise, the puzzle, or if you want to, we'll talk about how to put together a printed page that they can print out and color on their own. Okay, so this is set up now. You've got it all set up. Now what we need to do is, you remember that puzzle? Well, we need to go in and program that invisible button right there. That's going to be the piece that is going to play around with our random action scripting that we set up. So it's real important now that you pay attention to this, because this is some in-depth script that we need to go in to program this button. Okay, and this button script is going to be on all of our puzzle pieces, so we need to make sure that we get it set up right. What we need to do now is we're going to say on press. Whoops. On press, okay, we're going to tell it to do something. We're going to say start drag. Now this should look familiar to you, because why? Well, because we have seen this drag command in our drag and drop exercise. Okay, and we're going to end it right there. It says on press start drag. Notice we haven't said on release stop drag. That's coming next, but we're going to put some stuff in between all of that. Now we're going to say on release. Okay, we want it to do something when it's on release. Once we release it, we want it to do something. So we're going to say on release if, and we're going to create a substring. Substring. Okay, now we have a condition. We want to say get property. Okay, get property, and then we're going to say we have a target. Our target is empty. Here's the property. We have a name, whatever the name is, and then we're going to close it. And now we're going to say comma, space 6, comma 2, close the parentheses, okay, equals substring, and we have another get property. And notice this property, this P is capital, and if we come back here and look, this P is capital as well. So you really want to pay attention because it's real important that we keep this squared away. We want to say get the property, okay, comma, underscore, drop target. And we're going to tell it what the drop target is later. Drop target, comma, 7, comma, 2, okay, and then we're going to go ahead and open another paragraph because we're telling it to get some properties on the substring, and we're going to equal the substring to another get property and our drop target. We're telling it 6 and 2, so don't worry, we'll explain this in a little while. And I'm going to say another get property. So I'm going to backspace all the way. Whoops, I'm going to come back here. And I'm going to create another substring, or not substrings. I'm going to set my properties now. So now I'm going to say set property. We're going to leave the target open. Oops. We're going to leave the target open. And I'm going to say underscore x, comma, which is my x and y value. So there's my value. Get property. Okay, so we got another value, get property. You're not going to understand what part of this is because we are actually building our button properties before we build our modifiers, and we'll talk more about that. But what we're doing is we're setting up a substring of get property, the name, because we're going to call all these names out when we set the random. So don't panic yet if it doesn't look familiar. We're going to say, notice we have our open underscore x, which is our x value, get property, and we're setting another get property, oops, and we're going to say forward slash, oops, space, okay, and add substring get property. Here's our value, and then we're going to give it the index and the count. We're going to give it the where to find it and then the count, how many. Get property. Okay. We're going to open it up again because we're going to tell it underscore name, comma, and we have another index to close, and then we have it comma underscore x, close both of those, and end the string. So let's make sure we did that right. We have set property, we have open value on the x, we have get property. Okay, notice we have an open space. So this is where we're going to call for this space. Remember when we gave it space 1, space 2, space 3. Add substring, get property, okay, open, we open the, here's another kind of, we'll call this this is open, this is the name, whatever the name is, and then we've got it indexed, comma 2 comma underscore x, close both of those, and there. Good. That looks good. Okay, so now we have to do the exact same script, except this time we want to say, notice we had an index of 7 and 2. This time we're going to say 6 and 2. We're going to do the same thing for the y, though. So we're just going to come back here, select all this, hit copy, click here. We have to go back here. Hold on. We have to hit enter, hit. We're just going to go ahead and paste this, but it's not going to be x. It's going to be for our y value. Okay. We're going to come back, make sure we have all this for our y value, because we're playing with our x and our y's right now. We're setting up our properties. We're telling it that we want it to get, put the space in the x and the y. Okay. We're telling it we want it to get whatever the name is, because we're going to call that name when we set our random. But on release, or on press start drag, on release, if substring get property is an open variable name, then we're going to index it 6 and 2, which equals the substring get property drop target. So you know we're going to have a drop target somewhere. And that drop target corresponds with the piece where we had piece 1 and space 1. Those two things are going to correspond together. So we have 7, 2, and then we have set property x space. So here's our space, add substring get property, here's the name, whatever the name is, and then here's our index again, x, and our index y. Of course, we're not done, so we want to click here. We need to now set the property, and what this next set of coding is going to do is going to set the property of the x and the y scale. Okay. Remember when we looked at the elephant and the draggable pieces were larger when they were outside their spaces? When you dropped the puzzle piece into where it needed to go, it shrunk down. Well, this is the part of the program that's going to tell the puzzle, or tell it to be 100 by 100. When we do the random, we're going to make the puzzle piece a little larger so that you know when you have it in the correct location, you'll let it go. That's where it's on release. When you let it go, it's going to shrink down to that 100 by 100 piece. That might be a little confusing. Hopefully not. So we're going to set the property here. Oops. And we're going to have our target is open again. We've got the property is our scale, x, scale, comma, and then here's the value is 100. We close it, terminate the program, set property. Here's our target. Our value is the y scale, and then the value, the property was the y scale, and then the value is 100. So we want to make sure set property scale y scale comma 100. Okay, good. And then we want to say stop drag. So when it's gotten to its location that it's supposed to be, and it goes into its little home, which is 100 by 100, that larger piece, that's 120 by 120, is going to be shrunk down to 100 by 100, and you won't be able to, you won't drag it anymore. It won't be, it'll drop into that puzzle piece, and it won't be larger. And you can drag it out. As you saw, we can click and drag it back out. But once it's shrunk down into its piece, it stays that way. Okay, I hope that, because the random isn't active anymore on that piece. Once it comes back to its home, we're setting up the home here. Let's say if the substring get property and the name and the index is equal to the substring, which is get property, and the drop target, which is 7 and 2, okay, then we set the property of the x to space and the property of the y to space, and when those two things correspond with piece 1 and space 1, then it drops into its place and it's 100. Okay. then it's 100 again. Its size goes back down to its 100. Okay, so gosh, I hope that's not confusing, but sometimes I'm not very good at explaining programming on a video like this. Okay, so then we have to say we have an else. We have an else option. Oops, let's end that. And we want to say this. Okay, so we want to say this. We want to say close that portion of the program. No. Let's go back here. Let's go back. Okay, I want to be here. Okay, I want to say else. Oh, you're not going to give that to me right there, are you? Let's go back. Else, no. We want it to stop. Drag. Whoops. Stop drag. Right? Close that, and then we can put two closing parentheses because we want to make sure that we have all of our opening and closing parentheses where they need to be. Okay? So let's look at that. We have that opening right there, that opening right there. So we have one closing, and then we have that opening and two closing. So we do have all of them closed, hopefully. Okay, so assuming all of this works great, we want to copy and paste this because guess what? We got to put it on all of these pieces. That's right. We've got to put this on this little action, this button right here. Unfortunately, we're not able to program all of them, so we got to do this all cut and paste. Make sure you save it. Let's look at our control. Well, let's get it all in here and look and see if it's going to work for us. So what I want you to do now is pause it. Make sure all of it's programmed. Oh, you got all your programming in there because we'll probably have to troubleshoot later. We might have missed something somewhere, I'm sure. And then we'll go and do the program of the random pieces so that the random scripting right here, which randomizes the puzzle pieces when we save it and throws it out there, it'll allow us to check our puzzle. So go ahead and pause it here and then set up your, and we'll come back and do the random. Okay, so this is my last piece, draggable piece. Again, I'm going to give you a chance to look at the action scripting. So on press, make sure you have the opening brackets, start drag. This is open, the open variable. And then we have the closing. Now we say on release, open the bracket, opening bracket, if substring get property, leave that open, the name is the property, and then we give it the index and the number, equals substring get property drop target 7, 2, and then we've got, make sure you have two parentheses here. You've got another opening target because now we're going to tell it what to do with that substring. And here it is, set property for the X, space, add substring. Here's the get property, the values, comma, and then make sure you have two parentheses and the terminating line. We've done Y in the same way, same exact what we did. Remember, we copy and pasted this and just changed X to Y. On the set property, okay, so we go all the way down. Let's terminate that so you can see that. And then on the set property for the scale, we're telling it we want to set the property of the X and Y scale to 100 pixels. When that's all done and it's in its place, stop the drag, else, otherwise, stop the drag. This is an if-else statement. If this is all correct, do this. Otherwise, stop the drag. Once you've met these conditions, you're going to stop the drag. Okay, so once the conditions, if these conditions are met, stop drag. Otherwise, don't do anything. Stop the drag again. There's nothing there. Okay. Okay. So now we're back to our main movie. Now we need to program our random pieces. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video here. This will be part B. When you get this all set up, we're going to do part C.